The Coen brothers have never made a Western before, so I think the audience is in for a surprise.
It's not just a simple revenge story, and the characters are so deeply drawn. It's really this coming-of-age story and this loss of innocence for this girl.
Maddie Ross is a tough 14-year-old girl who sets out to find the killer of her father, and she tells herself that she's not going to go on with life until she reaches her goal.
I was concerned in the beginning because this was Hailee's first movie, and after the first day of filming, I said, oh, God, did we ever luck out with her? She's just wonderful.
I remember doing my first kind of big scene with her. The brothers gave her a note, and she took it, and she did the scene different. They gave her another note, and she did it slightly differently again. And I said, has this kind of thing been going on while I haven't been here? Like, is she this good? I think she's just kind of a special case, and this role kind of found her at the perfect moment.
Rooster Cogburn is a U.S. Marshal. He's got a foot in each side of the law. And Maddie's looking for a man with true grit, and he certainly has that in spades.
Jeff was inspired casting, I thought. This was a perfect role for him because it's a really fun role. You know, Cogburn drinks too much, he's inappropriate, he bends the rules. He's kind of a classic American protagonist, imperfectly perfect. And Jeff brings this joy to his work that is really infectious.
I have to say, some of the things that he did surprised me. He's just such an amazing actor. I mean, you know, you read the book, and you read the script, and you have a vision in your mind of what you think it's gonna be, and then you see these guys do it, and it's completely different.
LaBeef, he's a little full of himself. He wants to be treated like his station would merit, you know. It's a big deal to be a Texas Ranger.
Matt brings a lot of comedy to it, and, you know, he rides beautifully, and he's got a great character going. So it was, you know, real joy working with Matt.
You put Matt and Jeff together, and they're hilarious. We shared a lot of laughs together.
Tom Chaney is basically a drifter, and he ended up killing Maddie's father. He's a true sociopath, and he's capable of doing the worst kind of thing. I think that's the scariest kind of person.
Action.
Josh just did this thing with his whole bearing and with his voice. The first time he opens his mouth, you go, oh my God, I get it. I get what this guy's thing is. He was doing something so interesting vocally and the way he just moved to kind of create this guy. It's a really unique portrayal.
I play Lucky Ned Pepper. He's sort of the bandit chief of this gang of scallywags, and Ned has the busted up teeth and a broken jaw, and his lips are all cut up. So he's an interesting looking character.
Barry is amazing. And I had never seen him out of hair and makeup except one time. And it was the funniest thing, because I have to tell you, I didn't even recognize who he was, because the makeup and the hair, it's all dirty and gross. And they're like, all three guys, they're really good looking, but it's like, you know, you would never tell. But I thought that was funny. He's an amazing guy.
Well, all of these guys, Matt, Barry Pepper, Josh Brolin, wonderful actors. And when you get great players like that, everybody's game rises up.
These performances, I mean, Hailee's performance is just remarkable, as is Jeff's, and they all anchor the movie.
This movie, it's got a little bit of everything. You know, you get the wild characters and wild country, and you have the shootout.
There's action, and it's got its comedic moments, and it's got the Coen brothers twist to it, so it's got a little bit of everything. It's such a coveted role. It's the role of a lifetime. I mean, who wouldn't be attracted to it? She's a 14-year-old, tough, witty girl, and she has this goal, and she tells herself that she's not going to go on with life until she reaches her goal, and she goes for it.
Action.
I came in at the very tail end of it all, and I was very fortunate to have gotten a final call. I was reading for the Coen brothers. I went in to the audition as Maddie Ross, what I felt was Maddie Ross. My mom threw a outfit together for me last minute from Salvation Army and made me a burlap skirt the night before from Joann's, and I felt really prepared, and I was ready, and it was a good feeling.
How much are you paying for cotton?
9.5 for low middling and 10 for ordinary.
We got most of ours out early and sold it to the Woodson brothers in Little Rock for 11 cents.
Well, then I suggest you take the balance of it to the Woodson brothers.
So it was like every day of that week just sitting by the phone. And the phone rang, and my mom picks it up, and all I hear is, okay, all right. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't get it. And I'm just thinking to myself, I can't believe this. And all of a sudden, my mom calls me down. She's like, Maddie Ross, there's somebody on the phone for you. So I'm just like, this feeling comes over me that this is real. This is actually happening. So I run downstairs. My dad's taking pictures of me. Everybody's on the phone is screaming, and it was surreal. Shot in mainly Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Austin, Texas, and then a bunch of different places in Texas as well. I mean, I didn't get service on my phone at some times, but other than that, I loved it. The locations were absolutely beautiful, and I find that traveling is something that I really enjoy doing, and I'm so grateful that my job can take me places, because it's something I really enjoy doing now.
Action.
Stand up, Tom Chaney! Before I went on location, my dad took me to a shooting range because I wanted to make sure that that was something I was familiar with. And it really helped because obviously it wasn't what I expected, but I didn't know what to expect. So, I mean, it really kicked me back, but that was good because on set, filming that scene, there is no kick with the blank, but she falls back because of the kick of the gun. So it was really helpful. Well, I already know how to horseback ride. I used to ride English a couple years ago. So just, it was about 2 weeks before filming, just horseback riding lessons and trail riding and just stuff to get back in the zone of Western riding. The water was not cold. It was actually in the middle. It was a little cold, but not that bad. I had a wetsuit on under all my clothes, so it wasn't that bad. I have to say, Joel did most of the talking, and what I love is, like, they're always making sure they're both okay with it. It's, what do you think, Eth? I'm good. How about you, Joel? Like, totally making sure everybody was happy with it. It's amazing to see the way they work. It's like they don't even have to say anything to each other, but they're still on the same page. They were really flexible with any ideas that any of the actors had, and they were always, wanted to make sure that I was happy with the take that we did, and they were always open. If I wanted to do another take or if I wanted to try something else, they were 100% open to do that. I mean, at the end of every day, it's like I before I go to sleep, it's like I say to myself, do you realize what you just did today? And it's so amazing. It's like I said, it's a lot to comprehend, and I'm just so blessed, and I thank the Lord every day for putting me where I am, and I'm so thankful, and I'm so happy, and I'm exactly where I want to be.
When I started doing the research on this movie, you're vaguely familiar with this time period, but then you have to refresh yourself. And I did a lot of research. I did it for at least a month and a half. And what I noticed was that the women all had long hair, and the men all had facial hair. A lot of the men's clothes were in the charcoal gray family and the brown family and the black family, and their shirts were white or sometimes a textured stripe. And so we sort of based the color palette on that, because the women's clothing did come in lots of different colors, but for some reason it just didn't seem right for the story we were telling. And even if people were farmers, it's what they come to town wearing, particularly the gallows scene. It's their best outfit. It's 1870, and it's right when the bustle happened. It was actually a very short-lived phenomenon, and I love the idea of the hoop skirt. And so the majority of the women have a hoop skirt on, and I just wanted that domed shape to be sort of moving around the town, and I wanted to use some small prints on those dresses, or checks or plaids, but muted, but it would to animate the crowd because the men were going to be in such dark colors. We also wanted to make it urban in a way because we wanted it to differentiate completely when they go on the trail, and which is much more of a classic Western look. Like, as I was going through all the research, I was like, there's not a single real cowboy hat. Like, the cowboy hat with that crease did not exist in 1870. The majority of them were city hats that were just worn out. There were some guys who had bigger, wider hats, but they probably would have gotten them in Mexico. That's where the wider brims had started to make their way up. And then Stetson was a dress hat company in Philadelphia. His son had asthma, and he went west. And he sort of started to see these cowboys and saw that they needed a hat for droving. And so he said, I think these guys need a hat with a wider brim. And he went back, and he had his dad make him, and it was called the Boss of the Plains. And it's got a 4-inch brim and a 4-inch crown. And that's sort of the cowboy hat of this time period. It's not, what you would normally think of as the quintessential cowboy hat.
One of the most important aspects of developing a character for me is the wardrobe, and that tells you all kinds of things about the character. So as far as the costumes go, I'd work with Mary Zofries, and I sure admire her expertise on the looks that we were going for, and she gave me all kinds of wonderful books to look at all the different styles that the guy might wear, and we worked together for a few days, figuring out the right hat for the guy, the right patch for the eye. Boots are always important.
He's one of my favorite costumes. I couldn't find a coat for him anywhere, and Celeste Cleveland, who's my cutter, had started that Monday. We were fitting Jeff, I think, on Friday. I was like, I can't find a coat, and she made one for me without really any measurements of him, and we had some measurements of him from another movie, and the minute he put that coat on, we were like, done, that's Rooster. It was that was and it has a big slit up the back, so when he gets on his horse, it kind of, but it's not too grandiose, and it's really, really aged. He has a cutaway underneath it. We have him wear his holster underneath his gut, because Jeff really doesn't have a gut, but he kind of thrusts it out when he's Rooster. He has a shirt, he has a vest, he has his coat, so it makes him look a little bit bulkier. Maddie's costume is, the idea is that she's come to town, she thinks she's going to take care of her business in about a day. She'd figure she'd go home in the same dress. She has one dress, her one going to town dress. And it's a feminine dress. She just doesn't wear hoops. She has petticoats underneath. When she decides to go on the trail, what she ends up doing is she takes her dad's pants, she takes her dad's overcoat, she uses her own coat that she's worn to town, and her dad's hat, and she puts those on with the same boots that she came to the town with. That's what she goes on the trail with. And she takes a belt off of her dad's saddle, and that's what she hoists it all together with. LaBeef is in buckskin. Nobody else in town wears buckskin. He's the only one for miles in buckskin. And so that was on purpose, because we wanted him to sort of stand out, as it's described in the script as someone with maybe a little too much panache.
This was a character who had a lot of he had a lot of flair, you know, from the buckskin jacket to the guns and the spurs and everything. It's tough to be taken seriously in a buckskin jacket, so that was kind of a fun, play a bit of a dandy.
His facial hair is a little bit more sculpted and groomed, and he's got fringe on his buckskin. And LaBeef's hat has a fancier hat, and his has a wider brim, because he's from Texas and very close to Mexico, so it could have come from there. And he's taken the time to give his hat a certain blocking. It's got a curve on the side, and it kind of goes over his eye. And again, it's like the buckskin coat. It's got maybe a little bit too much panache. It's scripted, and it's also in the book that Lucky Ned wears woolly chaps.
These were such a unique item because, we really hadn't seen that in Westerns, I think, since maybe Tom Mix. So they needed to be very specific. They needed to look lived in and well worn. And they were huge. They were big and white and woolly. And I was a little bit nervous that I was going to be wearing these monstrous big woolly white chaps. But she said, no, don't worry. These are going to get all dressed down, and very much in the Coen brothers sort of style of washing things out and really kind of as realistic as possible.
Woolly chaps are things that they're chaps made out of Angora. The front of them is made out of Angora. The back is leather. It was for rain, mostly. If the chaps got wet, it would repel the water just like on an animal. We had to have them made for him, and it was a really, really difficult job to age them. I had the most outstanding aging department on this movie. It was all about the aging, particularly the characters that are on the trail. Josh Brolin's meant to look like an animal. He should just look like a hairy animal. A lot of it was his facial hair, and he got teeth, but he's in a cutaway. It's sort of like as if he stole it from somebody. It's a little bit too small in the chest and a little bit too short in the length, but my thought was that he stole it off of somebody he killed. Having a great fitting with an actor, and then watching all the elements come together when there's a big scene, and the palette things you've talked about and all the alterations. I'm a bit obsessive, and I do, even with all the principles and with all the background, it's like you're painting a painting with each person, and when you put all of those people together, it becomes an even bigger composition. And when they come to set, it's like harmony for me. It's like if it could be a sound effect, it would be voices just like, oh, and that's how I get goosebumps every time. It all comes together, and it looks how you want it to look, and it just comes from being collaborators, and that's how Joel and Ethan run their set. I think I love doing what I do because I work for them. Everybody talks to one another. It's how it should be. It's a real collaboration.
In the course of figuring out how to shoot the movie, we happened to find a town here where we're sitting right now in Granger, Texas. This was a railroad town back at the turn of the century, and some of these buildings are a little bit later than 1878. We managed to come in and try and bring things back another 25, 30 years.
In this particular location, we're recreating Fort Smith 1875.
We were fortunate because there's a lot of existing reference material on Fort Smith, Arkansas, and then there's just a lot of reference on towns of the time. One of the challenges is most of that reference is all black and white. So for us doing a color film, we want to make sure that we're doing something that plays into the time period, but also the look that we're trying to achieve. We spent a long time referencing colors that would be appropriate for the period.
The main thing that was important was to have a nice wide street. They had wide streets in those days so they could turn the wagons around. It's one of the things that when they settled on building on both sides of the streets, all the streets were wide. This happened to have that. It was cobblestone, which you see we had to put dirt down on, which we just did, and we're dealing with the rain, and it's muddy, it dries out, it's muddy, so it's starting to get packed down pretty nicely. And actually, I think it came out pretty damn good.
It's been about 3 to 4 months since we started. We've had lots of carpenters and scenics and greensmen. We've built facades over a lot of these buildings. We've built into some of the buildings. We've raised awnings. Making it winter is something we started in. In fact, one day it snowed when we were here, which is an uncommon occurrence in Granger. It was a nice way to see what it will look like when we add our snow to it.
I'll tell you what was here was 1, 2, 3. Those brick buildings, they were just flat. But the tops of them are really quite interesting. And the thing about what I'm trying to do with this Western, different from other ones, is to make it, post-Civil War, not a coal mining town, no swinging saloon doors, It needs to be America on the uprise and have some substantial buildings. And I think all these smaller cities like Fort Smith, Arkansas, were trying to copy Chicago or New York. And this was the last stop on the train. After this, you went into the wilderness. We couldn't do blocks and blocks of a town, so it was all about embellishing this block and that side street and carefully shoot it to, make it look bigger than it is. You can see that, once again, it's got really interesting shapes on top of the building, which I love. From where that yellow wood building starts to the end, there's an existing post office behind the saloon, which we have to deal with every day, rightfully so. People coming to get their mail and driving in, and so it's a little bit of a hardship for us, but mainly probably more of a hardship for them. That's, the whole town. That's our stable of carts and wagons, which will all have horses connected to them and make this street come alive. This tall, skinny building over here, this was not here. The street sort of ended there, and there was a big void in here, as you can see. The sidewalk continued across. We chiseled it out just to make it, seamless into the town.
Nothing is real punchy in color. There's no bright, bright reds or bright, bright blues. We've stayed in things that are greens and off-whites and kind of keeps that sepia feel to things.
This was another sort of cornerstone for wanting to shoot in this town. It's a period bank. It's a little bit, it's probably like 1905 or 6, so it's a little bit ahead of our time, but we turned it back with some awnings and changed the signage around and put some plugs in the doors and things, and it fits in. It steps this town up a little bit from just the wooden facades. I love this building and how it fits in. This is the area we selected to shoot this gala scene, which in the movie it's supposed to be winter, so we've been taking the leaves off of trees manually. That took a couple of people about, a week on a cherry picker just to pick off the leaves. So whatever trees are in the shot, we're trying to, make it look like winter. And that's just a great tree because we're going to have this big, the big hanging scene, and there's going to be, I don't know how many, maybe a couple of hundred extras. And we're going to put some people up on that roof line up there watching, which is, I think it's going to be cool. It's just going to let the characters and the costumes take this scene over against that blank wall over there. I think it should be pretty good. So this is the boarding house in the movie, which is fake facade that we stuck in here, and these talented painters are aging it right now. Even though it's probably fairly new in the movie, we need to age everything down so it looks good on film. No fresh paint job ever looks good on a movie, especially for a Western, even though it's probably supposed to be new. And this street is the main shot. One of the main shots is down here. There was probably 6 telephone poles on either side with telephone lines and power lines running through them, which we had removed just so we could have this shot. There was a couple that were too expensive to take out, like this one, so we wrapped it in tree bark. And when you see it from this direction, it should appear to be a tree. This angle right here happens 4 times in the movie. So to achieve that, we had to build another little house here and 2 facades deep in the background that have those chimney stacks on them. And then a little visual effect will just funnel into nothing over there. You could probably come around the back of this and see what's going on in some of the backs of the houses. So this is the back of this facade, and we do have a couple of shots looking out the front door. We have an interior that matches this down the block, which is the whole scene inside the boarding house.
Getting in the mindset of 1875 is challenging, and stopping and looking and see what things will tell a viewer that you're not in 1875, to really remind yourself there was no plywood. There was a lot of different things that we take for granted that we see all the time now weren't there. So really keeping focus on that has been hard, but exciting too. It's fun to remember what it may have been like.
It's really the first introduction to the town where Maddie and a hand from the farm where she lives, they arrive in the town and they're going to retrieve the body of her father, and they arrive by steam train. And so we had a train, we had to get a hold of this period steam train that we brought in specially and made arrangements with the Union Pacific, who has the rail line that's here in Granger.
This is a standard gauge locomotive, means it runs on standard gauge railroad track, which is the predominant track gauge in the United States, and that is 56.5 inches between the rails. wheels. It originally burned wood, and it was converted to oil later on when they discovered oil in East Texas and it was so cheap. It was originally built with a wooden cab. That cab was replaced with a steel cab, and then we still have that steel cab, and we replaced it with the wood cab to give it more of a period look. This is the builder's plate, and this is the 29,900th locomotive that Baldwin built, and it was built in January of 1907 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And that is the smoke box, and here are the cylinders, the valve chest and the steam cylinder, and that's where the steam comes to expand and drive the piston rod and turns the wheel. So it's completely self-contained as far as making its own air, compressed air for brakes, and its own electricity for lights.
Well, there's a lot of things going on up here, and normally when you're in operation, it's fairly loud up here, and the engineer and firemen learn to work with one another because you know sometimes you can't even talk, so there's hand gestures and nodding, and everybody just sort of has to know what's going on to operate the locomotive efficiently.
There are 2 or 3 train coordinators in the country. I've been doing this since 1972. This is my 307th production. What typically happens is they'll either get me the pages or the script, and I'll do a breakdown of what the story is and see, okay, we got the train scene here and the train works here, and we'll get an estimate of how many days it is. We knew up front it was going to be about 1 day for this show. Anything and everything that happens has to happen within the constraints of a tightly regulated industry. So this engine is federally qualified to operate on any railroad in the country, provided they'll let you operate it. Anytime we have a train like this out on the railroad, it's magic time for people. They just get all excited. And the word spreads very quickly, especially in this internet age. There's a train in Granger, and next thing you know, you got lots of people out here.
It's exciting because this is the sort of thing where you've spent a lot of time and money, and our production designer, Jess Goncher, has created this fantastic, huge set. And when you build something and it looks this good and it's big and you want to be able to show it off, obviously, a little bit. It's gratifying when you get to the moment where you're finally going to photograph it in the proper way and make it look really great.